So here we go, we're kicking off from the Polish War Memorial, and you can see a little insert there, a picture of the memorial itself in memory of all the Polish who escaped Poland in 1939-40 and came over and fought with the British Air Force during World War II, particularly in the Battle of Britain. And you'll see as we come up and join the A40, which is the main road from London to Birmingham, turns into the M40 highway. On the right is Northolt Airport, which is an RAF base, which also was the home of many fighter planes during World War II and, of course, during the Battle of Britain, and was a key base for the RAF, certainly on the west side of London, and there were plenty more in the southeast defending Britain from the German air raids during that period. As we come up on the right, there is actually a Spitfire. I think it's a Spitfire. It might be a Hurricane, but on the other side of the road. And there's also another one, and the main entrance to the base, which is actually, we're not going to pass that, but there we are. Passing other cyclists on the cycleway. As I say, this is a main highway, but this cycle path down here is very fast. It's not too populated, so you can do a decent speed on it. And it takes us down to the circus, which we shall see shortly. Now, this route is based around a few World War II, Battle of Britain places, and the other place it gets its name from, because I call it the Battle of Little Britain rather than the Battle of Britain. There is an area called Little Britain, which is a little bit of a hidden gem right on the edge of London, mainly only known by local people and people, I suppose, who are into fishing, because it's an area with some lakes and rivers, as we shall see when we go through it. So you can see the little inserts there showing you a Spitfire and a Hurricane. So I can now tell you that it's a Spitfire on this road and a Hurricane at the main entrance. I'd say quite fast down here, and plenty of room to get around other cyclists, as we're about to see. Morning, sir. So it's fairly bland, I suppose, but the next thing we're going to see, we'll come up to this traffic lights junction, and you'll see that as we cross that, we're going to go into sort of more residential area. I mean, obviously, although we're still in London, with the airfield to our right, there's not too many houses and too many people want to live just here on our left. I'm not sure what the land is used for, actually, but you don't have to go too far to get back into the housing estates. So we rumble on, and it seems longer than it does when I actually ride it. Then I don't have to do a commentary when I'm riding it, do I? So as I say, we should be coming up to Indian Circus shortly. The cycling path deviates away from the main A40 road just beforehand, and you'll notice on the right in a minute, you see the size of the lampposts will suddenly diminish, and they'll become very, very small. And that's because it's just so that the aeroplanes don't hit them when they're taking off and landing. As you can see, the street lights there are very, very short. As I say, it's just to avoid any low-flying aircraft catching them. One aircraft did overrun the runway once and hit a van on the road, which I think made the front page of the lower end of the newspaper spectrum. I think certainly the Sun had a thing about white van man being hit by a couple of Spanish pilots as they argued in the cockpit, apparently. Left debris all over the road, and it's just on this little section here, which is obviously, as you'd expect, at the end of the runway. The airport these days is not really used for what I might call warrior planes. It's largely used for the royal family and politicians, and in fact I do recall you see some radar and lighting things for the runway there, and I do recall actually Princess Diana's coffin being brought back here when she was killed in Paris. As I say, I just remember going down the road and there were huge crowds along the road to see the coffin being brought out of the airport. But yes, mainly politicians and very, very, very rich people who can afford to charter a private plane. So as I say, it's not quite a civilian airport, but certainly it's used for, shall we say, transporting the great and the good, rather than the package holiday people like you and me. So now we've just gone off the A40 a little bit, and we're actually running alongside the slip road. And this road was the A40 before it was in olden times, before it was built up. And I say the old bit of road now just is a slip road to get off the main road, which is built more like a highway these days. So, as I say, we're just about to enter civilization and hit Hillingdon Circus. You won't see any live animals. It's circus coming from the old days when I presume it must have been around about once, but more locally known as the Master Brewer. But like so many of these junctions, named after a building there was a hotel called the Master Brewer. It's now gone, and so there's quite a few the junctions along the A40, like Target, Master Brewer, Savoy Circus, the Savoy Cinema is now gone, Gypsy Corner, I don't ever remember seeing any gypsies there, but just a few do retain their names, like the Polish War Memorial where we started. So here we are in Hillingdon Circus, and we're just coming up to the junction with the A40 or the slip road ends by Hillingdon Station. We're going to go across this, and we have to use a cycle path here and avoid the motorists, although we have to give way. There's a slight bit of jiggery pokery as we go over this junction, but it's all well laid out for cyclists, and it works quite nicely, as you'll see as we cross the road. The traffic lights work for us, almost. Oh yes, I think it's going to work. No, not quite. So here we go, and back onto the cycle path the other side. Only temporarily on this, and we're going to go up to Honeycroft Hill in a minute. Now, just before we get on to Honeycroft Hill, and this is going to be the, I suppose, the most notable climb on here. It's not particularly difficult, and it's very, very short. But on what is largely a flat route, this will be the only climb of the day. Having said that, the end of the race gradually goes uphill for a long time without you ever actually feeling like you're on what I would call a hill. But before we get to Honeycroft Hill, on the left you're going to see a brown sign which just takes you down to the bunker. There's another RAF base up in Uxbridge, which is now closed, but there was the bunker where the whole of the Battle of Britain was coordinated from, and the RAF command, let's say, we're under the bunk, down below the earth in the bunker, and that's where all the information came on about the flight formations coming over the channel from Europe, and they coordinated all the takeoffs from the various airports in southeast England to go and meet the German bomber squadrons. It was preserved, and you could go and visit it by appointment, and they never ever charged you. Just rang up the RAF base and made an appointment, and a guide would take you down there. But when they closed the RAF base, they preserved the bunker because it's been preserved since in fact it's set out as it was in 1940. But they've turned it into a proper museum and visitor attraction now, and you have to pay, and it's a nice cafe there, which I've yet to check out, but I might use on some of our local cycle rides. In fact, the roads we're on are quite often used as Westerley CC little bolt holes out of London, actually. I mean, these are little roads that we can take that are not too congested, and certainly on a Sunday morning when you're doing a club ride, you haven't got all that busy work traffic. So this is a typical little escape route that we might use on one of our routes going southwest, perhaps, down towards Windsor and places like that. We're not going that far today. As I say, we're just coming up, and you can see there the brown sign, and the Battle of Britain bunker is just up this road here we're coming up to now. Turn left there, you can see the brown sign on your left. And this is the start of Honeycroft Hill. As I say, it's not difficult. It's very, very short. It's not particularly steep, but it is probably the only notable, what I would call, climb of the day. Even though we are going to ascend a lot of meters towards the end, but that's just a slow drag, really. So here we go. You can see we have taken the other cyclists out of the saddle as we move up to the traffic lights at the top. There's an army recruitment centre on the left. We're just about to pass. There we go. And nearly there. It's as I say, it's not a difficult one, and if you can put a bit of effort into it, and you'll soon recover, because we're going downhill at the other side, and there's the army recruitment station. If you want to sign up, don't go past looking too fit. They might think you're the right sort of chap. There we go. This is where it eases off, and we're just going to get up to the traffic lights on the, I call it a main road. I don't know that it technically is, but it's it takes traffic from the A40 down to Uxbridge Shopping Centre, so it can be fairly busy. But again, you know, when we're doing our club rides, this is quite an easy road to ride, and we'd never have any particular difficulties with it. So here we go. Now on the left, you're going to start seeing some hoardings where they're building lots and lots of houses, and that was the old RAF base at Uxbridge. I'm not sure what Uxbridge's role was during the Battle of Britain. Certainly, you know, it was a lot. It was big. It didn't have any runway or anything like that. I mean, it was close to Northolt. But here we are. This is just coming up now, and you can see where those cars are coming out. There's lots of new flats being built, and that's all on the old site of the RAF base. As I say, I'm not sure what Uxbridge's role was, but I mean, there were lots of non-flying things. I mean, certainly they used to, as I recall, all the RAF bands used to be based there. I'm not sure that, well, I suppose if they play out of tune, it might put invaders off, but generally I don't know that it was that involved in, shall we say, battles. But nevertheless, I'm sure somebody can correct me on that. Now, as we come up to not this set of lights, but there's another set of lights coming up. The roads into the old air base are there, and we're going to pass the Battle of Britain Club, which I'm not sure whether it's going to be demolished. You can see some of the old buildings from the RAF base are still being preserved for some reason. Not sure why, but that's a new one there. But we're coming up to Churchill Way, and I was quite intrigued when I saw it the other day that they have put on the road signs naming the road the reason for it, because I suppose once all record of the old RAF base is gone, people will forget what it was there for. I say I don't know what Uxbridge's role was in World War One. Of course, the bunker where the command was based in Uxbridge, but it was a much bigger camp than that. So here we are. Here's traffic lights. This is Churchill Way, and as I say, the sign on the road, it just comes up there, points out that it was named after Winston Churchill because he visited the base during 1940 during the Battle of Britain. Primarily to visit the bunker and see how it all operated, and you know, watch the there we are, the Battle of Britain Club just on your left, which is shaped like an aircraft hangar, the white building there. I don't know if that's going to survive. I mean, it looks run down. I'll be surprised if that was preserved. So we've got a photo just for posterity there. We're going to turn right in a moment. Normally I think I'd probably try and use the road and get across the road, but I'm using the cycle path here. Which means I'm going to have to go across using the pedestrian crossing, which is, yeah, slows you down a bit, but it works. There we go, over the pedestrian crossing, and the lights nicely staying the right colour for us, and we go down here. Now this is going to take us up past Brunel University. It's a relatively modern university, built in about the 1970s. I mean, it always calls itself Brunel University London, which is fair enough. It is in London, but I think foreign students coming over for the West End nightlife might be a bit disappointed. They have to get a tube into town to experience the centre of London. But it's probably one of the best tube rides you can take into London on the Metropolitan line, with far fewer stations and faster trains than most. So here we come. This is the one of the entrances to Brunel University. I say that, I suppose the main entrance is not on this road, but it's expanded so much that this thing looks like a main entrance as well these days. Lots of sports facilities on our left as we come up. I suppose students got lots of free time, lots of energy, so lots of I think all-weather courts for all sorts of sports just on the left there, and you can see the lights to keep them floodlit, I suppose, during the evenings. So this is Kingston Road, nowhere near Kingston, Jamaica or London. I'm going to turn right at the end and go down towards Cowley. It's probably not the most picturesque bit of the ride. We're going through some housing estates, but it's a nice little cut through, and we use it a lot on our rides because it's fairly traffic free and reasonable tarmac most of the way as well. So I say we're still in London. I mean, it looks, you know, as I say, we pick these roads because they're little bolt hole roads, and they, you know, get us out of London without too much traffic and what have you. So we're just coming up to the end of the road, and we're going to get caught behind a bus, which is a bit unfortunate. But there we are, a nice little right turn here, and as I say, down to the end, we're going to turn left at the church, but it looks like, oh yes, I think we're going to get a queue of traffic behind the bus, so it's not going to be ideal, but there we are. This was filmed in the middle of the day actually, so it didn't, it doesn't really reflect what it's like early on a Sunday morning when there's very little traffic about. But there, you know, it's still quite easy to do a reasonable speed and keep your pace up, albeit the cars slowed down for the bumps in the road. So here we go, down to Cowley, and a left turn at the mini roundabout coming up. As you can see, we're right on the outskirts of London, and you've got this sort of slight mix of you know, people's houses, but there's still the odd bit of land that's never actually quite been developed, from the days when it was once all fields. Not that I can ever remember those, of course. So here we are coming up to the left-hand turn, and this will take us through a housing estate. But as I say, I don't normally choose to ride through housing estates, but this little cut through is rather nice, and it will take us eventually down to Little Britain, which, as I said earlier, is an absolute little gem if you've never been there. And it's probably, as I say, only really known by locals and fishermen, because it's just one of those odd spots you wouldn't particularly drive down it, and it's tucked away. We're going up this little bump here, which was basically once a railway bridge that they filled in. Used to be a railway line under there, but they filled it all in, but left the hump of the bridge. So I assume the bridge is still underneath it somewhere. So just down to a little bit of a wriggle around these two bends, and then a right turn at the end coming up. As you can see, there's no traffic here. You know, it's fairly okay to do decent speed down here. As I say, it's not the most picturesque part of the ride, but it serves a good purpose and works well, and it's certainly worth it. I think, you know, if you're compensated by the joys of Little Britain, as you'll see in a moment. Little Britain is an interesting place. It's basically right on the border of London and Buckinghamshire, and it's got several lakes and rivers. The canal doesn't go far from there either, and so there's sort of waterways all round it. And as you'll see when we go down Little Britain, it's something like a causeway. You're riding down this road and there's actually water on both sides of the road. Don't ever drive down there drunk at night, because any misjudgment will leave you in the water one way or the other. So we come down to the main road. This is the main road from Uxbridge to West Drayton that we're going to have to cross. But again, as busy as that might be during the week, it's usually pretty empty on a Sunday morning when we use this little cut through. And as you can see, I can get straight across to the right hand turn by the white building there, which is, or was I should say, the old pub, the Paddington Packet Boat, named after one of the boats that would have worked on the old Grand Union Canal, which we're about to go over. Let's say that's the pub on the left, or remains of the pub. It's now closed. and we go to a little humpback bridge that takes us over the Grand Union Canal. As far as I'm concerned, that sort of takes us into Little Britain, although that's not, I think, what most people would regard as Little Britain, but it's certainly in the area. We're going to go a little bit further after going over the canal here, and to a right turn, and you'll see that there's another river there. There's certainly several lakes around it. I've never actually looked at the map to work out how many rivers and lakes there are, but there are certainly a lot of them. So here we go. I'm going to do a right turn in a minute, and that will really take us into what I call Little Britain. So we go past these last few houses, over the river, and right turn coming up just ahead. Now as we turn right, that to me is the start of Little Britain. Here we go. And you'll see as we go along this road, I don't think the camera picks it up as well as you see from the saddle because you're a little bit higher up, but there is, for most of the road, there's water on one side or the other, or for some of it, quite a lot. It feels like causeway. You can see one of the lakes on the side there on the left. There's still a couple of houses here on the right, but remember the other side of those is that river that we just crossed. So we're still on this sort of like slither of land between the waterways, so you can still see lots and lots of water to your left, and the river. Now you can see the river on the right. So we've got the river on the right and the lake on the left, and the cars you'll see parked here will all be fishermen out fishing in either the lake or the river. I don't know much about fishing, so I don't know which is best, but I've got a feeling the lake might be their chosen destination. So more fishermen cars there. Now you can get quite a good speed along here, and if you do it early in the morning when there's no traffic around, you're fairly certain to do a good time. Obviously later in the day, and certainly on sunny days when people pop down here because it's a nice place to walk, you're going to get cars coming the other way. You can see the width of the road isn't particularly wide. You've got the river on the right still, and there's nowhere to expand the road. I mean, it just really is a slither of road through some water. So later in the day when it is popular, you're going to see traffic, and you can't really go too fast. I mean, you do a decent speed, but you've got to be careful because the road's not that wide and you are going to have to pass traffic. So we've just passed the old mill there on the right, and we're coming up to the end. There's a harsh realisation that you're back into civilization again after that nice little country lane tucked away on the edge of London, because there's a nice big industrial estate at the end of the road. Mainly I think what you're going to see from the camera is a company that does crane hire and cherry pickers, which marks the end of the road, and we're going to turn left and leave London. So that's it. You wouldn't really believe you're in London looking at this little bit of video now. So here we are, gates to the crane hire company there. You can see the tops of the cranes and cherry pickers, and we go over here, and again we're going to go over another waterway here. As I say, I don't know how many there are, but it says another bridge over another river of some description, which takes us more or less out of London. And you'll see in a moment we get the green sign to say that we're in Buckinghamshire. There it is, and into Ivor. So the first village of Buckinghamshire. Now, the sign there said Ivor Village. This isn't Ivor Village, it's a bit further up. Some people mark getting outside London as crossing the M25, of course, and that's exactly what we're about to do. So if you still don't feel you've properly left London, in a minute we're just about to go over the bridge, and then we're outside the M25, and there's no doubt about it. What happens after that is that, although you won't probably notice from the video, most of the ride is very sort of gently uphill, because we're rising all the time up to our destination at Pinewood Studios. I mean, there are a couple of dips here and there, but you know, it's that sort of niggly 0.5%, 1% all the way, so you're never really you're never quite getting the benefits of sort of long, fast straights and downhills. There are some straight bits and flat bits, but as I say, it's not a climber's ride, this one, but you get a decent workout once we cross the M25 because of the amount of, gradual uphill that you're going to do over the last few kilometres. So here we are, this is the M25 bridge that we're going over, which takes us properly outside what people might regard as the London area, and into rural Buckinghamshire. It's not quite as rural as you might think we're about to go, because it's, as I say, it's close to London. It's sandwiched between London and Slough, which is a big industrial town. So it's kind of overspill, commuter territory. So here we go. This is the peak of the bridge. There's a short downhill, and there is, I suppose, the second climb of the day. It's not really a climb, but it's a short uphill ramp into Ivor Village. But Ivor Village itself, as you'll see as we go through the high street, is totally uphill. I say uphill, no, it's not steep, but it's not flat. It's the start of the climb that we're going to be gradually doing for a few kilometres. So here's the dip, and not the greatest tarmac there. Obviously the budgets in Buckinghamshire are slightly different to the budgets in London for that sort of thing. And then we just do this little climb up into the village, by the church, by the Swan public house, which is centuries old, I believe. So as we get through this, there's a little mini roundabout. As I say, there's a Swan on the right, the black and white building there, very old pub. The church on the left, and you have to stop for the mini roundabout. So here we go. Ivor High Street, which I'm sure has seen better days, but it's a little bit of a mix. There's some old buildings and new buildings, so it doesn't quite have that quaint village feel that it could do. But it's well served for people who live around here. So just through these shops, and then up to the mini roundabout, we're going to do a right into the road that will take us from Ivor to Ivor Heath, which I suppose, I don't know whether they count themselves as separate places or not really, but I think they probably do, but there we are. So as we say, just where this cream building is on the right, we're going to turn right where that car's coming out. Here we go, and our convenience store looks to have closed down. So this road will take us all the way to Ivor Heath, and we're now well on the way to Pinewood Studios. Pinewood Studios is in Ivor Heath, albeit at the other end of it. You wind down this road. It's not particularly steep. I mean, it probably is very, very gently going up a hill at the moment, but you wouldn't notice. It's nearly flat. Right at the end, there's a couple of dips and rises again. But as I say, just generally, you're not made to work, but it isn't that kind of total freewheel sprint sort of journey for the rest of the journey. So as we go past these fields on the left, we're going to go past a big house. We can't see, you can only see the gatehouse, which used to be the residence of the Duke of Kent once upon a time, and I think as the royals reined in their spending, it got vacated, and I think he went to live in Kensington Palace or something like that. There's the gatehouse to it. You can see the big gates into the former royal residence. There's not a lot to say about this road. In particular, it's, as I say, it's I believe it's less than 0.5% in gradient. I mean, you probably wouldn't even notice on your bike computer when you're riding it, but you just know because it's not you're not going as fast as you would if it were dead flat. There are flat bits on it, as I say, and so there's a couple of dips at the end, which I can remember riding when I was a young lad. They seemed a lot harder in those days than they do now, but then I wasn't a serious cyclist. Some might say I'm not now, but there we are. As I say, we're just probably coming through now into, if there is such thing as a border between Iver and Iver Heath, it's probably around this road here. Certainly I think we're probably nearer to Iver Heath than we are to Iver at the moment. As I say, there's not a lot to describe down this road. It's pleasant enough, it's traffic free enough. As I say, definitely one we use on our rides, and it's and a lot of these roads, as I say, they're routes to a sort of more countrified destination that we'll pick out into the Chilterns or down near Windsor and places like that, over to Maidenhead and those sorts of areas, Burnham. But these are the roads we use to get out there. As you can see, they're fairly rideable, particularly given the population. And I often think that our routes out of London out into the Chilterns are pretty good, and I don't know how people in other parts of London get out, but I certainly the routes out to the Surrey Hills never seem as nice as our routes out to the Chilterns, so it surprises me that so many people actually go down there. But of course the Surrey Hills are nice when you get there, and Chilterns, interestingly, I mean, Chilterns do have some really good hills, but they're not, they're at the other end of the Chilterns, so you have to ride quite a way to get to them. So here we are into Iver Heath. I suppose, geologically, this is probably the end of the Chilterns, but I don't think technically the local councils call this the Chilterns. I think you have to get up to Chalfont, but it's certainly the beginning. So this is the last main road that we're going to really ride, and it's very short. I'd say uphill again, niggly uphill. It's not, it's not steep at all. I mean, you can ride up it quite fast, but it's just, part of this general drag that we're doing, taking ourselves from just before Iver up into Pinewood Studios. If you want an indication of how Pinewood Studios is actually at some elevation, if you actually go along the M25, you can see the tops of the buildings for quite a way at Pinewood Studios, because they are, as I say, up on a sort of, and it's not a hill, but they're higher than the motorway is, and you can see, we're just climbing to that now. So there's a little flat stretch again before we go up again. We're going to come up to a couple of mini roundabouts here, and that will take us on to the final bit of climbing. Right at the very end, we've got a few hundred metres of flat before we finish at the studios. It will be a very short thing. So if you want to race somebody to the finish, you're going to have to. I would recommend sort of wait till the last right-hand turn, which I'll indicate as we get there. So here we are. This is the last sort of serious junction of the ride. This is the A412, which before they built the M25 was the North Orbital Road, and effectively was what the M25 replaced on the northern half of London. There's a lot less traffic on it these days than there used to be before the M25 was built, which is why they built it, of course. So we turn into here, Thornbridge Road, and this is the final little climb up to the film studios. This is residential. Anybody who's watched any Carry On films or many films, a lot of the houses that we're going to pass have featured in many films, and TV programmes as well, because of their proximity to the studios. So here we go. It's a nice leafy Buckinghamshire village, Iver Heath. That's probably, I'd say, I think the effect of the studios and London overspill is probably what most of the people here are here for. And I think also proximity to Slough, which is, as I say, a very industrial town and has a lot of jobs. So, it's a good place to be. Houses won't be cheap around here. So here we go. this is about the top of the climb, and although it's going to be flat from now on, we've got a couple of bends coming up. So as I say, I think about now it levels out onto the flat, and we just go through this width restriction here. And this was to stop lorries using this housing estate to deliver things to the film studios and make them go around the main roads. So we do left here, and we've got 3 more turns. There's a little bit of a straight here, so you could make an early break here if you wanted to be first to the studios. It's certainly, if you can gap everybody there, the fact you're going to have to slow down to twist around the bends is not going to be an issue. And you see the trees just ahead is where the next bend is coming from. You can just about see the black and white chevrons. No, they're not black and white chevrons, are they? It's just the effect of the trees. Sorry about that one. So here's the bend. So this is bend number 1, and straight into bend number 2. And then we're going to do a right turn at this junction, which I'll call bend number 3. Just behind the open top Jaguar there. And the fence opposite is Pinewood Studios, but we're going to go up to the main entrance. The relevance of Pinewood Studios and the finish is that the film of the Battle of Britain was made at Pinewood, so we started and finished with iconic landmarks relevant to the Battle of Britain and World War II. So that was the old entrance to Pinewood Studios on your left there for many years. It was quite narrow. Lorries couldn't get in there and they had to come up here. And the lorry entrance is now, of course, the main entrance where they built a big canopy, which we'll see any second now. And there we are. That's the end of the sprint, Pinewood Studios, where the film was made. Thanks for watching.